This is a simple to-do project where we build a to-do app using FastAPI for our backend and Nest for our front end. So here you can get to see your to-dos. You can add a to-do, you can edit a to-do, and that's where you can delete a to-do. So in this project, we'll be using MySQL and Postgres. So for MySQL user, we're going to be showing how to use MySQL for a project, and then for Postgres users, we'll be showing how to connect and link your Postgres DB to a fast API backend. So let's quickly test this out before we dive in. So click on the add to do right here. Let me see. So watch England versus Argentina. Something like that. And that's been added. I can click on the edit and mark it as completed. Or I can decide to, let's say, edit it out them like that. And then I can delete and yes, and that's when delete and removed. So this is basically just a simple overview, and let's dive quickly into it. We'll be following this simple step out right here. I'm going to share this document so you can get to follow them to make things very easy. Also, the code for this project will be shared when it is completed at our end. So the first we have to do is to be sure that we have terminal installed. I'm going to open my git bash or command prompt or terminal. I'm just going to do Python 3 space double dash version like that. If you have Python installed, it's going to display. If you do not have, you can just search for Python download, and it's going to take you to a page where you can download the latest version for your operating system. So that's the first thing we have to do. The next thing is to check if you have UV installed. So UV is more like pip, which is a package Python package manager. It helps you to package your application, to build, to manage, and do other things. Just like you have npm in JavaScript. So you also have UV or pip. So pip is something we've been using over the years, and UV it's a more recent and more better package manager. So UV it's what I basically use for all my Python projects. I've migrated my old project from pip to UV, so it's very easy, it's very self-managed, and it's is a better version of pip. So if, for you to be sure if you have it already, just come to your terminal, you can search for UV space double dash version. And if you see something like this, that means you have it. If you don't see anything like this, that means you don't have it. The next thing is for us to go and download it. So again, this has already will be shared also. So you can click on that, and this is the UV installation, or you can go to your Google and search for UV installation or something like that. And again, just take it to this. So if you go to the documentation, you can select your operating system, copy this, paste it on your git bash or your terminal or your command prompt, and it's going to install for you. You can use this other installer like PyP, like Homebrew, some other stuff like that. So that's it. After you've installed it, check the version again, and then let's move on. So the next we have to do is to initialize our project using the UV. Now we have UV installed. We have then move on to initialize our project. Again, I'm just going to be making use of my terminal. I'm going to seed into a folder where I want my projects to be in. I'm just going to create a directory right here. Let me just call it to do something like to do, seed into the directory, and let me run the command uv init, then your project name. That's going to be uv init. Then I'm just going to call this to do backend. This is the backend part, which is, yeah, just enter, and project has been initialized. If I do ls, you can see this is the to do backend right here. Now we're going to head on to open this project in our code editor. So for this, I'm going to be using Visual Studio Code. It's a popular code editor. So I'm going to open it up right here. If you don't have Visual Studio Code, you should download it by searching for Visual Studio Code and click on this, and you're going to get it downloaded right away. So I already have it. I'm going to open it up right here. Click on Open Folder, or try to look for where the project is on your system. Mine was on Tools right here, and that was called To Do's, and that was To Do Backend. So open that project. And if I open the project, I can see this how it is. When you initialize your project, you're going to have this stuff right here. You're going to have your Python version. You're going to have your main.py, which you can run. You're going to have your project, pyproject.toml. This is more like gives an information on your project and also help to house your dependencies right here. Then more like a readme stuff right here where you can write some stuff to give more information about your project. So that's it right here, and it's also going to create a Git for us, and you can see the Git ignore right here, and you can track this by using Git, defaultly created. So what we have to do next is to install our dependencies. So again, we have the command right here. We want to have our FastAPI. Again, this is a FastAPI project, and we need to install our FastAPI, which is going to be used as our backend framework. We install our FastAPI using this command. We install the Unicorn server. The Unicorn server is an environment that where FastAPI can run on top, and other dependencies can house or run on top. So it's just like a server that helps to run our Python project. We'll be using ORM, SQL Alchemy. ORM means Object Relational Mapper. It basically helps us to, write SQL script by using our Python code. So by writing a function or a class, is going to convert that to SQL and helps to connect to your database and do other stuff. So basically helps us, instead of us writing our database query ourselves, by writing Python code, it helps to manage our DB. So that's what ORM is, and the most popular one and the commonly used for larger scale project is SQL Alchemy. Then we will be, as we rightly said, we'll be using Postgres as our DB and also MySQL. So for Postgres users, you'll be adding this dependency, while for MySQL user, you'll be adding this dependency. So I'm just going to be showing how to connect both to our database. I'll be using both. Then we'll be using Alembic for our database migration. We'll be using pedantic setting to load our ENV variables into our project. Then we'll be using Greenlet for asynchronous DB query and all of that. So for us to have this dependency, you can either add them one after the other, or you can use this general command right here to install everything. So I'm just going to copy this command right here, and I'm going to come to my project, open my terminal like this, and make sure I'm in the root of where I have my project right here, pyproject.something. I'm just going to do the UV add, and you can see right here it auto created a .venv for me, and my dependencies were added right there, and those were in our .venv. So that's the power of UV. If we're using pip, he will not do that for us. So we have to manually create our environment and then start, doing stuff. But by using UV, which is an improved version of a Python code management, it helps you to auto manage your application within an environment. Now we can see this dependency have been added. For me to be sure, I'm going to go to my Py project like that. This file right here, you can see in the dependency part, these are the dependencies that were added for me. So we're going to proceed with the lecture. Let's proceed to, first of all, have a Python extension, which is going to help our IDE to recognize and properly format and write a Python code. So in your IDE right here at the left, you're going to see this kind of stuff right here, which is called extensions. Click on that, and you can see some extensions that are already there for me. That's for my IDE. Then moving down, you can see some extensions that are very recommended and stuff like that. So what you just have to do is to come to the search right here and search for Python like that. It's going to search the marketplace and pull up some extensions with the name Python. I'm just going to wait for this to do, yeah, stuff like that. So you can see there are some different Python extension right here. So the ones that you should be interested in is this Python right here, the Python from Microsoft. So click on install and install it. Then you also have the Pylance, which is Pylance again from Microsoft. This helps to auto detect Python code and also help for auto importation. If you want to import code from one package to another, this is very helpful and can help you do that. So make sure you add this to your installation. Then lastly, have the black formatter right here. This helps us to auto add indentation to our Python by when we do Shift Command F, help us to format our Python code. So that's basically what this does. Help you format your Python code. This other one is the main one, help recognize that your code is Python, and the Pylance help for auto importation. So make sure you have those ones. You can move forward by having your Python debugger if you want that, or environment, some other stuff like that. You can add them for that. Okay. Also, some students also like to ask which theme I'm using. So for this course, I'm using a very dark theme called Pitch Black theme. I'm using this, it's not really the best theme out there. I'm using this because I'm recording my screen. So I want my code to kind of be a little bit clearer when you're looking at it. So that's why I'm using this. But if I'm working, I like using the Learn with Summit theme. So this is kind of like a very cool theme that you can try out and use. Yeah, so let me just show how this works. If I set this one right here, Dracula, my code is going to be something, I don't know, something like this. Or yeah, something like this. Yeah, let's just take it back to the black one. So, and then you can see so you can, have a better view of my IDE. So that's it. And these are the extensions we need. And what I have to do next is to let me look what I need to do next. I need to run application by using uv run main.py. So when you initialize your project, by default, you're going to see the main.py right here. And it's basically just stuff like this. So these are basically simple. This is to trigger your application to run. And this is basically a function that is going to run, which is being called right here when your app is run. So when you do main.py uv run, it's going to execute this right here. And what this does is it's going to run this main right here, this function. So whatever you have in this function will be run when you run this file. So let's do that. Come to your terminal again. Again, make sure you're in the root of your project and do uv run main.py. Hit enter, you can see, let me zoom this in. Hello from backend. This is being printed out, is coming from this right here. You can see it right here. See, so that means that application was run, and when it was run, this method was called and this was printed out. So that's it, and we're going to head on next to write our .env. We're just going to start, something very serious. Let's proceed. We are going to have our DB connection. So right here in my root, I'm just going to right click on it and create a file, call it .env. Again, this file is going to contain our database URL. And we don't really want to expose our database URL because we'll be pushing our code to the public repo. So this will be ignored like that. So this is basically the coding standard. So let me call this database URL. And again, as we rightly said, we are going to be connect it to a Postgres and a MySQL DB. First of all, let's show how you can connect to a Postgres database. So I'm going to open my Postgres PG admin, which helps to connect to my Postgres. And as that is coming up, let me also pull my SQL up right there. Let me also pull my SQL Workbench out right there. If you don't have these, you can easily download them, and they're very straightforward to install. Okay, so yeah. So right here, for your database URL for Postgres, let me add a comment right here and say Postgres DB connection. That's going to be DB connection. That's going to be PostgreSQL and plus ASY NC PG. If you are surprised where this is coming from, if you can go back to your library, to your dependency, so to say, you can see there is this ASY NC PG asynchronous Postgres. This is going to help us to connect to our Postgres, while for my SQL user, you have this one right here. So we'll be using that to connect to our Postgres DB. So that's going to be PostgreSQL plus your library, then like double column, double dash, then Postgres, which is going to be your Postgres username, then double column, your Postgres password, which is your database password, at your DB URL. Mine is in the whole local host, and then your password, which is 54321 for my Postgres, then slash your database name. So I'm going to be creating a database name called Todo, something like that. So yep, so I'm just going to do that now. Let me not forget. So I'm going to open my pgadmin, come to my server right here. This is my PostgreSQL. Then within my database right here, I'm going to create a new one, which is create a database and call that Todo, something like this. And you can see the owner is Postgres, something. So click on that. Todos has been created. So that's going to be called Todos like that. So let also have connection for the MySQL guys. So this is going to be my SQL DB connection. The same way, let me say database URL equal to, that's going to be, since my SQL, then plus we need to make use of this MySQL library right here, plus this one, then double column slash slash your MySQL username, which is your database username. Mine is root. Then double column my DB password. Mine is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Kind of very simple. And at my DB link to my database, which is the local host, is currently right here in my laptop. And the port for my DB is 3306. Then slash my database name, which I'm going to be calling Todos. Then I'm going to open my workbench, click on my local right here. I'm going to create a database called Todos, like that. Fire that down, and that has been created. If I refresh, you can see Todos has been created like so, and that's going to be it. So I'm just going to comment this one out first. So let's just leave this one, and we're going to head on to have our config.py so we can inject our this value right here into our application. Currently, our value resides in our .env, which is not yet in our application. So we need to inject this into our application so we can use it to connect to our actual database. So let's do that. I'm going to inject this into my application. And before I do that, let me first of all structure my folder right here. So I'm going to create an app within the roots of my application. And within this app, I'm going to create some folder. I'm going to have my core right there, which will contain my core implementation. I'm going to have my DB, where we'll have my DB connection method. I'm going to have the models right there, which will contain my model. I'm going to have the schema, which will contain my schema, or what we call DTO. I'm going to have my router, which will contain my APIs, and I'm going to have, let's say, our server service like that, which will contain our service method. So that's it. And next, I'm going to open to my core right here. And within my core, I'm going to create a new file, call it config.py, and this is going to contain my method, which will help me. Let me rename this correctly. Config. This is going to contain a method that will help me inject my ENV into my application. I'm going to create the class right away, and I'm going to call it settings like that, and that's going to extend a base settings like that, and this should be auto imported for me, but if I click that, I'm not able to import it. I'm going to really show you guys how to do that right away. Now here I'm going to have my base. I'm just going to call this database URL, which is going to be what we have in our .env, and that's going to be database URL right here, which is a reference of that, and that's going to be a string data type. And then I'm going to have my model underscore config. Again, I'm going to import all of these, and that's going to be settings config, and I'm going to say my env underscore file, where we are injecting it from, is going to be from our .env. Then comma, I'm going to say if there are any extra stuff in my env, ignore them. That's going to be ignore like that. Hope that spelling is correct. Then I'm going to export this and create an object of it by saying settings, small letter settings, so we can differentiate it from this one. That's going to be my settings like that. Just create an instance of it and then export it like so. Okay, now if you can see right here, if I try to click on it and click on dots, I'm not able to import all of these. Click on command dots, I cannot import them. I have to import it manually by coming right here and say import. If I won't say import, I'm not even getting a suggestion. So that means that my project is not able to recognize my Python environment, and I'm not able to make use of import right here. So for us to solve that, first thing we have to do is to come to our file right here, come to your file at the top, come to the code at the top right here, click on settings, click on setting, and right here search for auto completion like that. Then search for auto completion, then at the tab click on the user, then look for the extension tab right here, look for your pylons, which is these pylons right here. Click on the pylons and make sure the enable auto import completion is enabled. That's the first thing, so that you can auto import your stuff when you are writing your code. And the second thing we have to do is to select an interpreter for this project. Currently, we do not have an interpreter selected. So for us to do that, click on command, comma, something like that. Okay, command P, yeah, select, click on, is it command P or shift command P? Shift command P. No, just do command P. Either of them is okay. So do command P like that, and at the top right here, search for Python select. So do stuff like this. Command P, and then search for Python. Say Python interpreter. So you're going to see where is it? You're going to see, move it this, but you're going to see Python right here, select interpreter. So click on that, And then right here, you are going to see different interpreter right here from my Python. This one is coming from my, this, what was this called? This, my system. This other one is coming from this folder. We can see there is this one, interpreter 3.14, which is coming from my environment right here, .env. Let me zoom this, which is this one right here, and from the to-do backend project, which is our project name. So by clicking on this, that means that that interpreter has been selected for this project. And because of that, we'll be able to, import, things seamlessly. So if I click on command dot right here, you can see import from pedantic setting. So this stuff has come right there. And then if I don't want to do that, I want to type it manually. If I say import, and you can see, if I say import, you can see I'm able to get some Python stuff right there. So that's basically how it's done. So the first thing, again, let me recap. If you're unable to import, is to come to settings right here and click on setting, and then you can search for auto completion. You can see you can import auto completion. The another one is to say Python interpreter. That should be in our environment, not here. So that's going to come right here, and just click command shift command P, and then search for Python interpreter, then click on select interpreter like that, then select an interpreter for this project. So select the one that is within this one right here. You can see this is our project. Select that, and that's going to use interpreter in your VENV right here that was bundled for you to package application. So when that is done, you can seamlessly import and do your stuff. So I can just click right here, dot, this has been imported, click, select this one that has been imported, settings. No, this should be the settings right here. Okay. So that's it. Setting is not defined. Let me format this. Our base URL, our model config, then settings equals to these settings right here. So I'm just going to, this setting should be like this. Yeah, just should be at the base right here. So we can, create an object of it, and then this can be reused. I'm going to head on to have my database connection method. So within my DB right here, this folder, I'm going to create a new file, call it database, BASE, that should be database. Database.py. And again, I'm just going to, first of all, create the engine by say engine. That's going to be, I'm going to use a method called create async engine. Remember, we want things to be asynchronous because our dependency is an asynchronous kind of dependency. So I'm going to just say, first of all, say settings. I'm going to pass in my database URL. That's going to be settings dot, settings is not there. So let me bring it now by importing it. So I wasn't able, let me just come here and say, let me click on this and check if I can import it. I cannot import it. Okay. So let me import it manually. Say from our settings in our app.core.config import settings with a small letter S. And then let me also say from SQL alchemy.ext, something like this, dot unasync co import create section create async engine. Now I'm going to say settings dot database URL. By doing this, is going to help get hold of our database URL right here in our .env. Now I'm going to say command, then just say echo to be false. That's not going to print the operations out for us. So then after that, that can probably just put it in a straight line if you want to do that, or let me just leave it as it is. Then after that, I'm going to move this down. I'm going to create a section factory, which will help to create a database instance. So I'm just going to call that async ax, or let me see if I can remember this, async section local, like that. That's going to be async section maker, which I'm going to import right here. Let me import it right here, which is right here. Then I'm going to invoke that and say bind to our ng right here, which we created above. And then comma, I can say expires on commit to be false. So what this means is that this is going to help us create our database section by connecting to our database and helping us create our database instance. Now, what we are doing by saying expire on commit equals to false, we are basically saying that this is going to prevent your database instance from expiring. Let's say you connect to our database and we'll perform an operation by saving a to-do item on the database or getting a to-do. After a database operation has been performed, do not terminate that instance. That's what expire on commit first. Do not expire that database instance. So I'm going to have a method so we can use to get the database objects by saying def means we're creating a method and say get db. Like that, that's going to help us get database instance. I'm going to say now sync with this one right here, async section local. I'm going to invoke it and then I'm going to call it as section, SESSION, and then I'm going to yield by yielding this section like so. This is going to help us get a database section. Like so, when I'm calling this, is basically invoking this, which will now help create an engine, use this engine to access our database URL, create a database instance. And right here, I'm basically calling that instance a section and I'm yielding it. So this is going to help us get our database. Now what I'm going to do next is to try to connect to this database so we can check if we can actually make a connection to our DB from this URL right here. So that will be done. So we're going to do that and try to connect to our DB. So what I want to do is whenever my application is run, whenever my project is run, I want to make connection to my DB and try to access my DB. If the connection is successful, I want to print connection successful. If it's not successful, I just want to print it out. That's going to make us know if we were able to connect to our DB. So within my app right here, I'm going to create my main method by saying main.py within my app right here. So remember, in our root project, we have main.py. This is basically for us to run our app, and then inside our app, I have my main, where we can have my methods to, where we have use my FastAPI to create an object of my application. I can configure my middleware right here and define my router and my API. You can actually do everything in your main right here. But most of the time, it's more appropriate to have a code right here to redirect the run to trigger this right here. So let's just do that. So now within the main of my root project, where we have the, underscore name right here, I'm just going to trigger to run the main in our app. So I'm just going to come right here and say, when your app is run, this main method is run, I'm going to say unicorn, before, let me even import it, unicorn. Let me see if I can import it I could not import it. Okay, let me just import it manually from here and say import unicorn. Okay, so I'm just going to say, if we remember our dependency, we have our unicorn right there, which is this one right here, basically our server. I'm going to say unicorn. Import unicorn could not be resolved. Okay, that's not my problem. So unicorn.run. Why is this unable to resolve? Let me see. I mean, that starts here. Okay, unicorn.run. I'm just going to check that out. I want to, when you do uv run main.py, I want to use Unicorn to run our application, and that's going to trigger our app.main. It's going to trigger our main.py within our app folder, and I want to my host to be 0.0.0, which is going to be, that should be .4 0. You can probably use localhost. The reason why I'm using this host is that if you're on your server, your localhost, your host becomes the IP of that server. So wherever I decide to deploy my application, my host becomes the IP of that application, of that server. That's what this is. So if I'm running this on my local machine, my host will becomes 127.0.0.1 or localhost. So that's basically what this means. It's going to pick the IP of wherever you are running this project on. Then I'm going to define my port, which is going to be, let's say 80, 85, I don't know, anything. Then reload, because you're on a dev mode, reload is going to be true, which means that whenever there's a code change, that should be reload, spell it correctly. Whenever there is a change of code change, we should reload our application. We should just reload. So in a production, I'm going to turn this to false. So that's it. And within my main right here, within my app, in this app folder and my main right here, I'm going to have a method to create my objects and then run it. So I'm going to first of all come down right here and say app equal to FastAPI. And then I'm going to say title of the project can be to do app, anything you want to call it. Then description can be, let me just say, a nice to do app. Then I can pass the version, which can be anything 0.1.1, 0.1.0, does not mean. Then I think that's all we have to do for now. Then I'm going to pass my middleware by saying app.add, where is it? Add middleware right here, you can see. And that's going to be, I want to pass my course, CO, capital CORO, SM, this should be imported. I'm expecting this to be imported for me, my course middleware, comma, let me click dots, and that's not coming, so let me just import it from, I think my import is not working correctly. I'm not happy with it, okay? So yeah, so that's the FastAPI, from FastAPI import FastAPI. Okay, then I'm going to say, okay, that's already been done right here. Okay, I'm going to say from FastAPI dot middleware dot course import course middleware. Yeah, that one. Then after that, I'm just going to pass in my origins by saying allow origins. It basically means that where do we want to allow to access these our backend. We want to allow all endpoints, our origin from everywhere. Then I'm going to say allow credential and then some other allow methods and allow headers. Just do those ones like that. Allow credentials true, allow methods, and allow header. Okay. And after that, I am just going to create a simple API by saying app.get. Just create simple get method so we can get to see if this is working. Then when you go to the slash, I'm just going to pass a tags, which is going to be, let me just say, call this root. And then I'm going to create my function, which is called root, and that's going to be, I'm just going to return something by saying, yeah, hello, welcome to your to-do apps, blah, 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 stuff like that. Yeah. Now, that's fine. Now, for us to be able to check if we've connected to our DB, we need to use what we called a context manager or a lifespan. This is going to exist whenever our application is run. So I'm going to come right here at the top right here before I create my app. I'm going to come and say at asynchronous context manager. I'm just going to import this by importing it from context library right here. And then I'm going to create my function. I'm going to call it lifespan. And I'm going to pass my app to it. I'm going to inject my FastAPI into it. And right here, I want to first of all print to say attempting to connect to DB, something like that. Just want to have some logs. Then I'm going to have my try and catch stuff right there. So what we're basically doing is that we're basically having a try, and I want to just, catch and then throw my exception right there. So that's going to be my exception. And let me import the content engine from our database. That's going to be from our app.db.database import engine, or not engine, not echo, like that. Yeah. Then this test should be imported from typing. Where is it? Should be imported from SQL Academy. Where's SQL Academy? Yeah, that one, like that. This is basically database stuff. So, and then very importantly, try to yield. If you don't yield this, you're not going to, you have a problem. So what we're basically doing right here is this is going to be a lifespan. And for us to use this, I'm going to come to my FastAPI right here. Let me destructure this. And after my version, I'm going to say comma lifespan equal to our lifespan. So what this means is that before an object of my FastAPI is created, it's going to try to connect to our database. And when I'm shutting down my FastAPI, it's going to also shut down like that, something like that. Yeah. So let if we have to shut down, let me if we have to shut down right now. So if we are no shut down, this is going to print this stuff. When we are shutting down, we're going to just, close or dispose our database connection. That's what we're doing down right here. Okay. So in as much as our fast API is up, our database connection is going to be up. As we are closing down, is going to shut down our server, our database connection, and we're going to print these logs out like that. So this upper one is going to be startup. Let me have the comment up right here to say startup and then shut down. So that's basically it. So let me just try to test this out. uv run main.py, enter. Unicorn, okay, we're unable to get unicorn. I'm just going to check why. Right here, I'm unable to, unicorn is not detected. I'm just going to check why I'm unable to get my unicorn, which is already in my project. So I'm going to check that out, and then we're going to continue. Okay, I think I didn't spell it correctly. Yeah, I think it was spelled uni. I don't really know what the name was, but it's supposed to be UVCon. Yeah, not unicorn, UVCon. Yeah, okay. So let's do that again. And I just copied the dependency from here. I just copied the name right here, the name, and then I just pasted it here just to be sure that the spelling was correct. Now, let's run that again. Let me zoom this in. Run. Let's wait for the logs to see if it's able to connect to our DB. And unicorn running on this, okay. Where's my DB log? I'm not getting that. So let me see. Yeah, database connection failed. You can see, which is not a problem. So we are unable to connect. Database connection failed. Multiple exception. Let me check what is going on with my DB. It was unable to connect. Let me see. That's one Postgres 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. I think that's my password at localhost 43. Okay, I think my password is 5432. There is no 1 in my password. I just remember. Password is 5432. So let's stop this and try to connect run again. You can see right now, attempting to connect to DB, successfully connected to database. So we've been able to connect to DB. And if I Control C, as I stopped it, we can see stopping in progress, database connection pool cleared. So when I stopped my DB, it cleared my connection pool. Now, if I try to pass a different database name and I try to restart, you can see database connection failed because this database does not exist. This is very clear error, very clear right here. All right, so that's it. And I'm just going to test for the MySQL connection. So for our Postgres users, let's try to connect with you. I'm just going to, for our MySQL users, so to say, and I'm just going to come to my MySQL and make sure I have the to-dos database created. I'm going to come right here and Control C to stop this, clear this up, and then uv run main.py. Make sure you have your MySQL stuff. Let's just test this out and attempt it to connect. Let me see. It's going to try. Let's wait for it to do its stuff. You can see successfully connected to my database, which is the MySQL one, as we can see right here. So this means that both of our DB connection worked correctly, and we're just going to head on to, let me see, we're going to move on to have our model and then our ORM. So that's going to be like this. Within my model right here, I'm going to create my model. I'm just going to create a file, call it todos.py. I said todos.p, that's a little bit of weird stuff. todo.py, so let me break this down and zoom that a little bit up right here. So create my class, and that's going to be called base, and that's going to take a declarative. This is supposed to auto import for me, declarative base. I don't like when I type stuff. So let me try to import that again. It's not able to import. Now, so let me import it manually, which I hate doing stuff. I hate importing manually. I think that's the shortcoming of using a hybrid editor. So I'm just going to say from SQL alchemy.orm import declarative base like that. Okay. Yeah, this one. Okay. After I've done that, I'm going to say pass. This is very important. If you're using MySQL, if you're using SQL Alchemy, which is the most popular ORM, for when you're writing your model, you have to create a declarative based object, which will then be injected and used subsequently. So this is the first thing you have to do. Just create your base, pass in your declarative base. This is going to be your declarative base. So just unfortunately, that's how things are done. Now, let me have my to-do model now. I'm going to call it to-do, and this is going to pass in my base, which again is going to be the declarative base, passing down. And here, I'm going to say underscore table name equal to-do. So this is going to be the name, the table name that will be created for us in our DB. So that's going to be the name. Then I'm going to then pass in my field, which is my ID, and that's going to be mapped. Okay, I need to import this mapped something here, mapped like that. So that's going to be a string, and that's going to be an data type integer, which is our ID, and that's going to be mapped underscore column, which I need to also import right here. Mapped underscore column. So what this does, it is help to create a column for us. I'm going to invoke it like that. So it helps to create a column in our database table for us with the name ID. And right here, I'm going to proceed to say primary key to be true, which means that this is going to be our primary key. And then I'm going to say auto increment to be true, which means that this will be self-managed. We have no business, messing around with this ID. So that's going to create a column in our database. It's going to create a table for us called to-dos, and within that table is going to create a column for us called ID. Let's create other column, which is going to be the title of our to-do. And again, we already know what that is. That should be a mapped. And then again, you can say mapped string data type. I'm just going to say optional of string data type string. Optional means that it can be null. It can either be a string or a none. Or or you can say, if you don't want to use optional, you can say string or none. It's okay, same thing. This is just a modern way to write it, while the optional is for the older ones, for those who are using a Python which version lower than 12. So this is going to work. But for a more modern version, you use this one right here. Here's it. I'm just going back and forth. You use this one right here. Yeah. But who are going to work correctly? So again, this is going to be a column. So let's just invoke the mapped column so you can convert this to a column for us. So I'm just going to copy this and paste so I can have other fields up right here. And then this is the title, and let's also have a description for the next one. This again is going to be optional. And yeah, should I even I think the title should not be make optional. The title should be mandatory. So let me just remove optional from the title. You must pass in a title so we can make the description optional. So I think this is the best logic. So I'm going to have the is completed, which is going to help us to check if our to-do is completed. And this is going to be mapped by, and that's going to be a Boolean data type, true or false, and mapped column. And I'm going to say the default for this value should be, let's say false. I wanted to say true, let's say false. So if you are creating your to-do item, the is completed should be false by default. Now let me have the other field, which is going to be the date it was created. That's going to be created at, and that's going to be data type date time. That should be imported from date time, as we can see right here. And equal to mapped column, very important. And I'm going to have a default value by saying server default equal to a function, and dot now is going to get the current time and then set it as it created at. So let me also copy this and have the updated at, which is going to be the date time you updated it to do. So updated at again is going to be a date time, and mapped column, which means that we are creating a column on our database, and that's going to be server default equal to function dot now, which is correct. It's going to create this. I'm just going to say this should be update. This should only update when there's an update. On update equal to function func func.now. So what this does is that if you create an object of a to-do, the updated add value is going to be the current time. Whenever you're updating that to-do item, this on update will be triggered, and then the current time as at that time will then be the new value of the updated add. So that's it for our to-do, and this is how ORM work. And by doing this, is going to auto generate the necessary SQL queries for us that will help us to auto create a database in our table called to-dos, help us create the columns, and also help us with the necessary code that can help us to add data, update data, and do other stuff. So we're going to head on to have our schema set up. Let me head on to have my schema. So schema, it's more like a DTO, or what we call a data transfer object. So it's basically going to be the class that will be used to receive the object to create a to-do, or we want to use to return a to-do response back to our API. So let's do that. That's going to be within the schema right here. I'm going to create a new file, call it to do, and all files should end in .py. So here I'm going to have my class. I'm just going to call it to do base. This is going to be used to create a to do and do all the stuff. So it's going to expect a base model. It's going to help us to register this as a schema, and it's going to have a title, which is a string, and then a description, which is also a string too. And because the description is going to be optional, I'm just going to say it should either be a string or it should be none, like that. And by default, let's make it to be none. Yep, so that's going to be our base. And let's also have to update our to-do. So that's going to be a class. If you want to update our to-do, we're going to be using this second class to collect the response or the request. We're going to use it to collect the request, and that's going to be to-do, no, to-do model, not base exception. What's that? To-do model, and I'm going to have my title, description, and is completed. All of these will be optional, which means that you can decide to update your title or the description or the is completed. And here I'm going to have something called model config, and that's going to be just any additional thing you want to do, which is going to be config dictionary, and that's been imported. Any extra thing you want to do, we can have them within this configuration right here. For example, we can say, I want to enable, camel cases. By default, if you are using this without any of this, you can, in your body, you have something like is completed. But we can say allow user to also say is completed. This is camel case. So I want to users to also be able to receive a camel case request from the front end. I'm just going to say alias generator, and that's going to be to underscore, where is it? To camel, like that, where is it? Equal to camel. I need to import this one again. That's import it from alias generator. So I'm going to say from pedantic.alias generators, then import to camel. We also have to Pascal. You can see Pascal to snake, stuff like that. So yeah, so let me just get rid of this. This will help us to pass in a camel case. We have to convert this snake case to camel case. We can also have order by saying populate by name and other stuff, just have them up like that. Okay, so let's also have a class that will be used for response. That's going to be to do response. And again, this is expected. This is going to have everything in our to do base right here, which is the title and the description. Let me copy the to do base here. And in addition to the to do base, which means that in addition to the title and description, I also want the ID also to be a part of the response. And then also want is completed, and then is completed, created out, and then updated out. So I'm going to import the date time like that. So this is going to be our schema. And we'll be using these to receive the body to create a to-do. We'll use these to receive the request to update a to-do, and we'll use these to return a response whenever we've, done something. Whenever we've gotten the response from the DB and want to return the object, we use this to return. So also, a best practice is for us to have another file which will be used as a generic response. So we want to have a wrapper that will be used for all API response. That's going to contain the status code, the message, and then the data. The data in this case is going to be the to-do response here or any other thing. So within my schema, I'm going to call this response. Again, .py, and first of all, I'm going to have my type variable like this. Again, you're not to complete it. Okay, I think that's better. And that's going to be a T. And then I'm going to have my class. and that's going to be an API response. Call it an API response, and it's going to take in a base model from pedantic, and then a generic from typing, and then that's going to be of T, type T, and that's it. So what fields do I need? And that's going to be, yeah, it's everything right here. Everything is right. So what field do I need? I need the status, and then the message, and then the description. So let's have it up right there. The status, the message, the data, and yep. So what's this? Our type var should be imported from typing, not AST. So remove that one. Put the comma right here. It should be imported from typing, our type var. Okay, so I can add some model config right here again as usual and say config dig like that, not like dig, but I mean dictionary. So I'm just going to say from attribute true and exclude none to be none. So exclude none means that if there are any of these values whose data is not there, then do not add it along with the response. So that's it for that. And what should I do next? We need to head on to have our service class. Let me see. Okay, now before we have our service class, let's persist this data. Let's persist this so that if we go to our DB right now, if I say select, no need for select all from to do's like that, you can see there's no, I don't have my table is empty right now. So let's persist this data. Let's perform a migration so that this model right here can be created. This table can be created in our database so we can get to move on. Let's perform our migration. And again, the first thing for me to do is to just run this command, uv run alembic init, then you dash t, then you can pass in what async, then call it migration. So when you run this, it's going to generate some folders and some file for us, and we're going to see. Let me close all of this for now, close all, and yeah, let me also close my app too, so we can get to see the changes. So within your terminal, paste it right there, or you can write it out. Let me zoom it. UV run alembic init dash t asynchronous migration, enter, and it's going to create a migration folder for me right here. And then you can see the alembic.ini file. We don't really have to mess with this, leave it as it is. And in this migration right here, let me put it down. Within the migration folder, open the migration right here. You're going to see env.py. Click on this right here, and then we're going to, just do some little modification right here. So we down after this config right here, I'm just going to say config dot set main option, and then I'm just going to say SQL alchemy. That's going to be, you can remember we're using SQL alchemy as our ORM. So SQL alchemy, which are ORM dot URL, and I'm going to say settings. Let's get our URL, settings dot database URL. This setting should be small letter s. That should be small letter s right here, the object of the settings, coming from our config within our app. If we can remember, call this one right here. So we can get hold of this, our DB URL. So that's what we need to do. Then that's the first thing we need to do. I can just add a comment right here to say, I added this, I done something just to be sure. So when you look at my code, you can get to see the one I added and the one I said, let me say we added this. Then after you've done that, the second thing you have to do is to register your model. You can see down right here. We are being told that add your model metadata object here. For auto-generated support from this is just like the default one that was created for us. We need to modify this and add our own. So I'm just going to say, I modified this. We modified this just to say the ones we did do. and then 1, just to show the changes that we made. So for this one, I'm just going to uncomment these two out, down, and then this is going to be from my model right here. Let's import it from app.models. This is our model. Import, our model was called to-dos. Then right here, I'm going to say metadata is going to be the to-dos dot base dot metadata. You can get rid of this one down. No, okay. So that's just what we need to do. Just this one and this one. That's all. Okay. So that's it. And after you've done this, let's perform a migration. After we've done this, I have the directions right here. The next is for us to execute this command to create our migration, and then we can persist it to our DB. So I'm just going to copy this right here. There's no need for us to type it. You can go on the AI platform, just type, migrations in FastAPI using SQL or RM. It's going to show you the command. So we don't need to have that in mind. Just copy that, and again, I'm going to pull this up right here. Clear this, paste it right there. Run UV run Alembic revision, auto generate initial migration. You can say initiate, anything you want to call it. Enter. And you can see it has created some kind of crazy schema table for us, which has not been persisted. If I come right here and I execute this or I refresh, it has not been persisted. You just have the Olympic version, which has been generated for me. So I need to persist this to my DB. I'm going to come right here and run this command. Very simple. And paste it right there. UV run Olympic upgrade head, enter. And that's going to, okay, virtual require length of, okay, I'm having a problem with my migrations. Okay. Yep. So that means my primary key is not okay. I need to make modification to my model right here. So come to my to-dos right here. Let me look at the problem I'm having here. And primary key is mapped by an integer. Okay. Primary key should be true. Auto increment should be true. Okay. All right. Let me see. Which other problem? Let me look at the error. I think the error is a little bit crazy. Let me just copy the error and ask my Gemini AI to help me, make do justice to it. Copy it right there. Copy my model as well. And let me just see what's going to tell me. The core problem is asking me table title virtual require length of, okay. So it's telling us to, let me see. So it's telling us to specify a character right here to the title, okay? You can see this is it. We are told to specify for a mapped column, we are told to specify a character, something like that. So I'm just going to, let me see, I'm just going to do that. So copy this one right here. Let me just type it. I don't need to copy it. Let me just type string and then your character right there, okay? So come back right here and say for the column, the title, I'm going to say string, which is from Ask SQL Academy, and then my total value for the title should be 255. That should be the length. For my description, I'm going to say string. The total value should be like 1000. For the total character in my description, I want it to be 1000. So that's it. We need to do this again, and I'm going to perform the migration again. Let me clear this, and then let's do that again. We need to perform a new migration. So copy this, generate migration schema. Let's have a new migration, and then call it initial migration. Just say updated. It's gonna create a new migration for me, which is error failed, target database is not up to date. Okay. We assume non-transactional. Okay, let me just, don't really want to waste time there. Don't want to debug that on my own. Let me need a helper, a helpmate to help me debug this. Okay, delete a broken migration stuff. Let me see. Okay, run this. Okay, let me see. Drop. Okay, we need to SQL. Okay, we need to drop the existing migration. Okay, let me do that. Come right here. This is the existing migration file right here. Let me delete it. Drop it. Drop table. Is it? Yeah. So let me delete the existing migration file. Let me perform the migration again. That's what AI told me. So let me perform the migration again. Fail target database is not up to date. See the same thing. All right. So let me see. Let me see. Okay, let me do that again. Target DB. So let me refresh this DB. I think that was removed. So what's the problem? Refresh this right here. Okay, refresh this right here. Table. The table was, I think the table was not removed. Let me drop table again. Drop now. Right. So let me refresh. Yeah, I think that has been dropped. Okay, so let me do that again. Perform migration again. Enter. And okay, let me just move on. I'm still getting the error. Let me just do this to persist the stuff like that. Let me see. Okay, again, I think this was not properly done. Let me refresh this. Let me drop. Okay, table. And then drop that table. Now refresh. Table is gone. Okay. Yep. So let me clear this up and do that again. And let me say new. So we're still having the error. Let me see. Let me run this one right command right here. Okay. Kind of a little bit creepy. Let me run this one. And let me get rid of the head right there. Let me remove the migration and remove this migration right here. Okay, let me just tell AI this is what I found, then you can help me remove it. Okay. Yep. Say, can you remove the migration so I recreate it? Something like that. Delete the migration file. Okay, I don't really like doing this, but let's just delete the migration file and let me see. Yeah, that migration file has been deleted, so not the entire folder, that particular file. So let's create it again. And let me see my database table. Yeah, let me remove what I have right here because this is always generating a migration for me. Let me drop this one. Does not really mean, but yeah. So I've removed the old one. Let me generate, initiate the migration again. This one. Okay, that's generated, and let me run the head like that. You can see migration was successful if I come to my DB and I select off from to-dos. What's going on? Let me refresh this one. Tables right here, and you can see I have my to-dos. It was actually called to-dos. Yeah, select off from. I didn't specify the database name, which is to-dos dot to do's. That's kind of, I don't know. That's okay. That's a little bit weird. Yeah. So right now our migration is successful and we can see that the database was persisted. So the problem we had was very simple. When I created my database columns right here, title, description, I didn't specify the value that the column should, especially for a string data type, you need to specify the maximum value that can be stored right here. If you're using a MySQL, but for a Postgres, it does not really mean it default to, I think, to this value for Postgres. So this should be done for MySQL people, so you can do that. So let's do the same migration for a Postgres. So I'm going to change my ENV to Postgres, so we can target the Postgres DB. If I come to my Postgres right now and I to do's and I refresh and I come to my schema and I come to my tables right here, you can see there's nothing right there. So let us execute this query and say, let me say new, something like that. And that's been, okay, the database is up to date. Okay, let me just upgrade this head so you can, you can make use of that. So execute that, and that's been done. So let me check my Postgres now. If I refresh, you can see my to-dos right now has been created. As you can see, if I open my my Postgres query 2, not that one. If I open this query 2, which is the query 2, I say select all from to-dos. You can see now my table is there. So this has worked correctly. We're going to head on to have our service method and then our API. Then to test this out and then we head on with our front end. So let's head on to have our service. So again, within my app right here, I'm going to my services right here. And I'm going to create my service class. I'm just going to call this todos.py. And that's going to contain some of my, I'm going to have a method. I think we've been using to do all the time. Let me just call it to do underscore service to a little bit. I mean, we've had too many to do's, so to do underscore service like that. That's a little bit better. And we're going to be having method to get all the to do, to get a to do by ID, to create and then to update a to do and then to delete. So it's kind of very fun. So create a method to get all your to do's and call it get all to do's like this. What you need to do, you pass your database, which is what we remember. We want to have access to our DB to, be able to connect to our database and get our to do. So I'm going to import this right here, and that should be imported from our SQL Alchemy .ext.asynchronous stuff like that. And this method is expected to return, which is dash arrow. It's expected to return a list. A list should be from your typing when you want to import it. It's expected to return a list of to-dos. No, let's not use capital letter L. Let's use small letter list. I'm just a little bit list, yeah. List of to do, which is going to be to do, which is from our schema. Or okay, let's say from our to do, our database. So we're accessing DB right here. So here I'm going to say results, which is going to be result from our database query. That's going to be, we are awaiting our database dot execute, and I'm going to have my select, then want to select to do, which is our model, to do dot where, then the where's my to do, where to do dot id is equal to Am I even sure I'm doing the right thing? No, I'm not doing the right thing. I think I'm a little bit lost right here. So I'm actually writing a query to get a to-do by ID. So to get all to do, that's going to be await db.execute, select to do. That's going to be order by, select to do dot order, order by, order by should autocomplete. What's going on? Dot order by, that's going to be to do dot created at dot descending. You want to get the latest to do first. Let me invoke the descending like that. And then I'm going to return the list of everything. That's going to be the results. Then dot scalars. Is this? Yeah, scalars. And then I'm going to invoke that and say dot all, and then invoke that method. So let me just explain this. So what basically doing is we are waiting because it's actually an asynchronous operation right here. We are waiting, we are having connected to our database. We are accessing the existing database session we have, which was created when our app was run. And we are basically saying that the database.execute, we're executing this command. Everything right here, it's a command. And what's the command? We are accessing our database table by saying select to do, which is our database name. And we are getting all the value from our DB. And we are ordering them by it created that we're getting the latest value first. So which means that if we have a million data, we are getting the last one, the latest data that was added first, and that will be returned right here. And we're just getting all the value and returning it right there. So this is expected to return a list of the to-do right here. So that's it. So let's also have to async def, which is a function to get a to-do by ID. And then that's going to take in this right here. Let me just copy this database here. And since we want to get it to do by ID, we need to also pass the to do ID, which is going to be an integer. To do underscore ID, which is an integer like that. And then this is going to return a to do, just one object. So again, I'm going to have my result set, which is going to be results, which we are waiting, our db dot what's going on right here, execute, and then I'm going to say select. What do you want to select? Access our to-do database, and then I'm going to say dot where, which means that we don't want to get everything, we want to get particular data, dot where, and what we want to do, we'll say where the to-do ID, which we want to get, is, let me even do this right here, is equal to the to-do ID that we are passing in. So I only want to get the to-do whose ID is equal to the ID that is coming in. So that's going to get that item. I'm going to say to-do now equal to the results which we've gotten from our dp.scalar1 or none. Invoke that. And if there is none, if not to do, if we do not have that item, I'm just going to raise a HTTP exception. Else, I'm just going to return the data. So HTTP exception should be imported from FastAPI, which is this one right here. And status should be imported from FastAPI 2, which is going to be, here's the FastAPI, comma, status, like that. Import, why am I importing select? Select should be coming from the SQL Academy. Just going to say from, this is wrong. It's going to be from SQL Academy import select. So also be careful on where you are importing your stuff from, okay? So we will not, get into problem. So what's this one? Schema, no, we don't need this one. So that's it. And let me just call it to do data like that, data. like that. Okay, so this is going to help get a to-do by ID, which is an individual to-do. And let's also have a method to create a to-do. So that's going to be moving down right here. And async function and call that create underscore to-do. And again, that's going to take in our DB data like this one. DB data, which is this one. And then comma, we need to also pass in the to-do object, which is going to be, it's a to-do to create. Let's just call it that way. And that's going to be our to-do base, which is from our schema. So let's not forget that. And then I'm going to, what's this going to return? This is going to return the created to-do, which is the to-do. So moving down, let me move this a little bit back. Now what do I want to do? I'm going to say new to-do equal to to-do. Then I'm just going to use this and say to-do.create.model dump. So what this model dump means is that in this our object which we are passing in the to-do is going to collect the ones that have data and is going to convert them to this right here. So if there's any data that, oh, I'm not supposed to click on this one. So if there's any value here that is not present, or if there are extra fields that do not correspond to our to-do object right here, it's going to ignore them, pick the one that is there, and then convert it and populate it as this to-do right here. So that's what this model dump does. Just a straight way to just say, if you have a title, add it. If there's no description, remove it. Just a straightforward method. So after I've done this, I'm going to then persist this to my DB by saying db.add. And then I'm going to say, what do I want to do? Add a new to-do, which is this object right here, to our DB. Move this down, which is this one right here. Now you've done that, what do I want to do? I'm going to await the result by saying db.commit. So commit is that I'm going to persist the data into my database. And I'm going to await another thing by saying db.refresh. And then that's going to be the new to-do. So that means that this new to-do right now is going to be the to-do that has been saved in our DB. So all the value you have right here, the existing value of this new to-do object will now be the value that was committed in our DB, including the ID which was saved. Remember, this did not contain the ID. The new to-do had no ID. But right now, as we are refreshing it, we are passing in the saved ID down to it. So then I'm just going to return the new to-do like so. And that's pretty cool. So that's it to create to-do. Let's also have to update a to-do. This is going to be very straightforward, just as we did. And it's going to take in your DB and then your update to-do data. So let me just copy this one right here. And then say to-do to update, something like that. And this is going to return a to-do for me. So right here, as we did before, I'm going to first of all say to do to, let me just say existing to do, existing to do. That's going to be, I'm going to await my database, which I'm going to be using to update to do. I'm going to say await. As a matter of fact, if I'm passing in my DB, I need to pass in the to do ID because I want to update a to do. So I'm just going to say to do underscore ID, which is an integer, like so. So await this method get to do by ID, which we created above, get to do by ID, passing your DB and then passing the to do ID. This is going to help get our existing to do if it's there. And then I'm going to say update data, which is to do to update, like that. That's going to be to do to update dot model dump. We already understand what model dump is. And then we're going to pass a query to say exclude onset to be true, which means that if there's any value that were not set in the to-do base, is it to-do base? I think this should be to-do to update, not the base. So this should be to-do to update here. Yeah. So if there's any value in the to-do to update data that we are not passing in, let's ignore that. That's what this does. We're going to remove those values and set it as the updated data. And then I'm going to, just update it right away by coming right here and say, that's going to be existing to do. That's on for key in updated data.items, which is all of these. We are setting the attributes right there, committing it and then refreshing it and then returning it. So this is just going to help us update our to-do. Lastly, let me quickly have to delete our to-do. It's very straightforward. I'm just going to have it up so we will not waste time. So that's it to delete a to-do. What are we doing? We are passing the to-do ID and we're basically getting the to-do by ID. After you've gotten it, I'm just going to say db database.delete that to-do we've gotten. Is going to remove it from our database. We're going to commit and return nothing. So that's it for our service. And what we have to do next is to have our API or our router, which we then pass where we call this service from. Now for us to have our route, I'm going to close all of these so we can have some breathing space. And right here within my panel, I'm going to go to my router right here. I'm going to create a new file. I'm just going to call this todo underscore API.py. This is going to have contain our API. And it's going to be very straightforward. The first we have to do is to create our router object by saying router, which is going to be API router. Import it from FastAPI API router right here. And then I'm going to say my prefix equal to, it can be anything, let's say /todo. So what it means is that before I do that, let me add a tag, which I'm just going to call todos. So what this prefix means is that if you go to your URL /todos, it's going to call whatever you are going to be having right here. Now, before we proceed, we need to tell our main app where our router is, where our API is. So I'm going to come to my main right here, the main within the app, and I need to register this route. Remember, this is now our API. We need to register these in our app so we can get to know where we can forward requests to that stuff. So I'm going to come right here and register the router and say below the middleware right here, I'm going to say at app, let me just say app dot include router, and that's going to be to do underscore router. Before I will do that, let me even import this router right here. So that's going to be, let me import it right here. So that's going to be, say, to do router. That's going to be from app dot routers import to do API. So that's going to be right here. To do API dot router. So this is going to help us to register. Very, very important. So you have to, let me add a command, say register your to do router here. Yeah. So if you don't do this, there's no way the application will be able to access this router right here. Okay. But registering that router, if any route goes to /todos, is going to get to know that and then trigger this, like that. So let's continue with our method. So first of all, let's have a method to get all the to do. So that's going to be at router. Why am I using at router like that? Make sure your notation is at router dot. What do you want to do? A get request. So if this is a get request and the path is the root, that means if you on localhost 8085 slash to do's and this is the root right here, then you want to do something. First of all, the status code for a successful response is going to be status. This status should be coming from FastAPI right here. Status should be status dot http 200 dot OK. So a successful response will be a 200 OK. Then let's have a method like that, which is going to be a get request. They say let's call the function name get to do's. And then this is expected to take in our DB, which is going to be an async, our async section like that. And that was being imported from, let me import it, say from SQL academy.ext dot async cio, something like that. Import your async, this one right here, async section, this one. Okay, so this is going to be passed in, and I'm going to say equal to the value of this database is going to be, say, depends, which is going to be FastAPI. Is going to be the get underscore db from our database. Okay, so that is it. And one little problem, this depends right here should be, yeah, it should be there. So that's fine. Okay, so then this is expected to return something. So I'm going to say it's expected to return an API response of a list. This should be small letter. I'm always fond of having capital letter. If a list of to do response like that, plus list of to do response like that. And I'm going to say to do's equal to await our to do service dot get or to do's, and I'm going to pass my database down like so, and then I'm going to return the data by building my API response and saying the status is going to be status dot http 200 dot OK. What's going on? http 200 dot OK, and then I'm going to say the message will be to do's cutting, will be anything you want to pass in, and then the data right now is going to be the to-dos we've gotten from our service, which is going to be the to-dos like that. So that's it. Again, let me destructure this so I can explain this properly. Now, what we have right here is that this is a route, which is a get request. We are basically subscribing to this base router right here and saying when a get request is coming in, and is within the root of your application, if it's a successful one, the HTTP status should be success. Now, this, when the request is coming in, this is what should be method that should be fired. The first thing you have to do is to get the database instance and then set it as DB, which is an asynchronous section. Get the database section, the existing database section, which is the connection to the database. Get hold of that database, save it as the DB, and you are expected to return an API response of a list of to-do response. Now that you've gotten the database instance, call the to-do service and then pass the database down to the get all to-do method. This is going to use the database instance to access our DB to get all the to-do and then return it right here. Now that we've gotten the to-dos from our service method, want to build the response, we're basically building the API response. We are passing the status right there, the message, and then the data, which is going to be our to-do. Remember, our API response was what we built in our response. And we basically said that all our API should return this method right here, should return an API response, all our API. So whatever, either you are doing a delete request, a get request, a post, this should be the format of the response we will be returning so we can structure our app properly. And that's what we are doing right here. So that's it for getting to-dos, and we're going to be very fast to have a method to save a to-do. I'm going to call that post a to-do. So we've kind of, done a lot of talking right here. So let me just be very fast with this one. And this has been pre-done quickly. And that was to create a to-do. So again, we're basically saying router.post. If this is a post request, then passing the to-do base. The to-do base is basically the body that we pass down from our API, either from your front end right here. It can be the body coming from your front end to add a to-do, title, description. This will be bundled into a base to-do, which is this one right here. Where is it? Base to-do and passed in. Then again, we are getting the database instance and saving it as DB. Both of these data would be passed to the create to-do method of the API service, which will then use that to create a to-do. And after that, it's going to return the new to-do created as new to-do. Then we're going to bundle this new to-do into our API response, passing the status code, the message, and then the created to-do, and then we return it right here, which can then be returned back as a response of a successful to-do creation. That is it. Let's also have to get a to-do by ID, which again is very fun. This will get a to-do by ID. Again, it's a get request. When you go to your get request and you pass in the ID to the URL, which we usually call the parameter, and it's going to call the get to do method. And again, we are passing it to do ID, and then we are getting the database instance. Both of these will be passed down, and we'll call the method to get it to do by ID. If the data has been gotten, we're going to return this API response down. Let's also have to update a to-do, and then we have to also delete a to-do. So same way, very simple. The only change is the object that we're passing at the body and then the method. So this is going to be to update a to-do. Again, the method, it's a put request. And if you go to users, go to /update, then the ID is going to be passed down, and then we are collecting the ID right here, which is being passed down. And we are also collecting the body of the to-do to be updated, which is the to-do update. And the database session is being created and passed down. And these three data will pass down to the update to-do method. They will be worked on, and the resulting data will be bundled into the API response and then returned successfully. Now, let's also have to delete a to-do, which is the last one. And that's it right here. Again, it's a delete request, and this is the path. Path can be anything. And then we are passing the to-do ID one to delete, and then the database section, which we are getting and pass it down, is going to make use of the to-do ID, and we delete the to-do with this ID by calling the delete to-do from the service method. So that's it for our API. And we're going to head on to test this out. To test this out, I'm going to first of all run my application. Again, before you do that, always make sure that your router or your app has been registered in your main. So if you've not done that, come to the main.py within the app folder, add this stuff right here, app.include router, and then your API, then the router. So I'm just going to run my app by using uv run main.py. Okay, we're having problem with, we are not able to run this. Let me complete model class and stuff. Okay. Yeah, I think I'm importing some wrong stuff right now. I might not be able to check everything. So let me just okay, pedantic v2. I think I'm having some crazy stuff. Let me see what the problem is. And then we know what to do. So let me come to my service right here. Go over the error and see what is going on. Okay. All right. So import datetime. Okay, you're probably okay. I'm not importing the datetime correctly. Okay, probably, yeah, that's correct. I'm not importing the datetime properly. So let me look for where that problem is, and let me see. Come to my API. No datetime is there. Come to my service class. No datetime is there. Come to my module, which is my schema. Yeah, this is it. So schema, this is it. So yeah, use import from datetime, import datetime. So this is how it should be. So again, Control C, clear this kind of creepy stuff. And let me clear this up again. Close all. uv run main.py. Everything has run correctly. So let's test this out. I'm going to be using Postman. Postman is a testing client for us to test. So I'm going to use Postman. I'm going to come right here and create a, let me say create, I don't know. I want to create a new collection, I'm going to call that to do, like that, or to do's. Then right within that collection, I'm going to add, this is the folder, right? I'm going to add a new request, and I'm just going to call it get all to do's, like so. Again, our port is running on, our app is running on port. What's the port? Let me see, 8085. So that's going to be localhost 8085 8080 slash to do slash just to do's, and that's a get request and send. Yeah, all our to do's have been fetched, but we have no data, which is empty. The API have worked. So duplicate this and let me add a to do right here. That's going to be a post request, and that's going to be called add to do, and that's going to be a post request. And I'm going to click on the body right here, click on the raw, and here should be the JSON selected. And let me allow this to load. Then create an object, which is like a JSON dictionary object, and that's going to be the title. I can just say that's comma, and I can add a description. Yeah, Let me just say title should be to write some code or to write some code. Description is probably, I don't know, so I can learn to code, something like that. Yep, so click on send. You can see to do created. Let's create more. To visit grandma, added to, let me see, this time around I want to pass a description. Let me say to eat burger, and then to watch football. Yep, so if I try to get all to do's again, we can see we have some pretty data up right here, which is a little bit. We have our title, description, the is completed, the created, the updated that. So let's also have to update to do, which is going to be update to do. That's going to be a put request, and the path should be slash to do's slash the to do one to update. Let's update the first one, and then click on the body raw, the JSON right here, and then I just want to update the description only, and that should be an description, and then say I was updated, something like that. Send, method not allowed. Okay, let me see what is the problem. Come to my API right here, router, and to update a to do, that should be, let me see, that should be slash update. So I didn't pass that correctly. That should be slash to do slash update slash the ID. Send, to do updated successfully. I was updated. We can see the value right here. So let's finally delete a to do, delete to do, and that's going to be a delete request. And that's going to be slash delete slash, that's going to be to do ID2, or let me delete the first ID1, to do ID1, send, to do deleted. If I try to delete it again, you can see to do not found right here. So let me get it to do by ID. This is going to be the last, and let's get to do by ID, and that's going to be slash to do slash one. That's going to be get request. Send, to do not found because it was recently deleted. So let me get to do two. Send, and to do has been retrieved. So if I try to get out to do's again, that's bam, I have all the item. If I go to my DB and I try to get all my to do, you can see they are both right there, seated right here. So that's it for our to do's. Our app has worked correctly, and we're going to head on to have the front end implementation. So let's head on to have our front end. We're going to be having our front end in Next.js. So I'm going to first of all come right here, and I'm going to go to the official documentation for Next.js, which is nextjs.org. And if I click on get started and I click on installation right here and I move down, this is going to be, I select npm, this is going to be the command we can use to install or to create our project. So let's do that. I'm going to open my terminal up, and let me zoom this in. I'm going to cd into this folder, and ls, so this is the folder where we are, and I want to create my front-end application right here. So I'm going to come and copy this command right here, file it up right there, and I'm going to call my project name to be, let me say, Next front end, something like that, and click enter. Double dash yes means that it's going to say yes to the recommended setup for us. So click enter, and that's going to create a Nest application for us. I'm going to wait until this has been created, It will come down and continue. So these are the dependencies that is being installed. You can see next to React DOM, and it's adding some of these TypeScript, the Tailwind, which is a styling framework, and some of these, the type version of the next, the React and the React DOM. This is a TypeScript version of that. So this will be added and we return when this is done. So this has been created and I'm going to head on to open this project. I'm going to come to my Visual Studio Code right here. I'm going to open a new project and open like that. And that was created within our to-do folder right here. And that was called Next Frontend. I'm going to open this up right here. And I'm going to try to run this project. So to run that, I'm going to open my terminal up right here. And the command to run it is going to be npm run dev, something like this. And you can see it's running on port 3000. So if I copy the URL and open it up right here, you can see this is our next project. So all of this code right here is coming from this folder right within the app. If you open the app, you can see the page right here. All of those code are coming from this page right here. So I'm going to get rid of everything, and then before I even do that, let's quickly go over all the files we have right here so we'll get a hint of what they are. So the one below right here is our configuration for the TypeScript. The next one is a README, which just have a little documentation on how to run your project and how to prepare it for deployment. The post css.config right here, if we decide to use Tailwind CSS, this is where we have our custom configuration. Then the package.json, as we rightly know, this keeps a record of the dependency we have for our development, and then for the project, and then some scripts, and then a hint of the version and some other details of our project. Then the package log, this keeps a track of the history of the dependency we've had on our project. The next.config, this is where we have some configuration for our project. For example, you may want to specify which URL should be able to access your application. You can say, let's say let me see, dev allow dev origins. You can decide to do something like this, and then probably just specify, only where you want to your app to be accessed from. So those are some of the things that can be done right here. The next.env right here, this is basically where you can register some of your env environment. Then we have some config.mjs. This is used for tests. And we have your cloud.md if you are integrating agent, if you are working with cloud AI where you can write code using prompts. You can this is basically have some documentation which you can have right there. Then for it is also the same thing with the agents right here. And .git ignore, we know what this is. And then the public file folder right here, this contains some static file like that. And then we have our node modules. Again, this contains all the actual dependency file that we'll be using. At the top right here, we have the .nest. This just auto-generated and it contains the bundled code that can help us run application in the development phase right here. Then the app right here is the folder we'll be working on. If I open the app, we can see we have our page.tsx right here. As we rightly saw, this is where this stuff, where is it? This is where this stuff is coming from. Let me run my app again. npm run dev. So everything is coming from this page. So if I come right here and let me have my own custom stuff, let me just say hello h1 and say hello world. If I come right here, And let me run this. You can see hello world right here. And that is it. So we can probably get rid of this. We don't really need that. Then the layer, this is our generic layout, and this is what is rendering our page like so. Then we have our global.csx. This is going to have our styling. I can get rid of this and then say h1 and then say background color to be, let's say, blue. And right here you can see the background color has returned blue right here. So this is going to contain our global styling, and these are favicon, which is basically the stuff at the top right here. Okay, so I'm going to again, let me see. Then right here, this is the layout right here. We can change the title for our project right now. The title is saying create next app. I can just cut this, change the title to be to do app, something like that. And we can see right here is we change to do app. And also I can add a description to say a simple to do app like that. And for these other ones right here, I might not really need these ones. I can probably get rid of them. I will not be needing the Google fonts. I can get rid of that. I can get rid of these ones right here. And then I can get rid of this styling right here within my HTML like that. And yep. So back right here, and that is it. So in the next lecture, let me Control C and Control Run again. Everything is moving fine. In the next lecture, we are going to head on to have our navbar and our footer so you can display something more fun. So I'm going to head on first to structure a project folder so we can have a more organized project. So within the root right here, I'm going to have a folder called components. That's going to help me. This is going to contain my navbar and footer component. And also, I'm going to also have a folder called services. This is going to contain a method where which will contain the methods that we'll be using to make a call to our backend to get our data. Now, I think that's all we need to do. Now I'm going to head on to my app right here. And then in this app, I'm going to just within my global.css right here, because this is not going to be a CSS heavy project, I'm going to have my CSS pre-written. I'm going to have it up right there. So access to this code is there. Go over it and get hold of my styling. So what I'm basically doing right here is to define some variables which can easily be accessed through our application. So these are some color variables and also some global styling right here and like that. So that is it. Now I'm going to head on to have my footer, navbar and footer. So within my app right here, I'm going to create, not within the app, within this component right here, I'm going to create my navbar and footer component. So within this component right here, I'm going to create a new folder, call it nav like that, and then create another folder called footer. And within the nav folder like that, I'm going to create my component, which is going to be a nav, a new file, and that's going to be nav.tsx. And this folder will also contain the styling specific for this nav bar only. So that's going to be nav.cxx. And also for the footer, let's also do the same thing. That's going to be footer.txx, and also for the styling. So that's going to be create a new file, call it footer.tsx. And then for the styling, that's going to be footer.csx with a small letter F. So now in my nav bar, I'm going to have my nav. We want to do something like this. So this is the older project. I want to have a little bit of nav like this. I want to have a footer like this. Just something like that. Something simple. So right here, I'm going to come and first of all say, very important for Next.js, you have to define the components that are client and the components that are server. So you remember Next.js is used for building full stack application, but in this our case, we just want to use it for the front end only. So when you are using your Nest, you have to define the components that are clients, which are the UI components, and also define the components that are server. So for us to tell Nest that this component should be treated as a UI component, we have to say, call it say use client like this. This is going to let Next.js know that this is our client and this should be treated as a client. So I'm just going to come right here and export my component right there by saying export default and create my function. And that's going to be called nav like so. And I'm going to, create my variables. So first of all, check if the menu is open. Remember, if I inspect this ODAC one right here, if I click inspect and I select, let's say, a Pixel phone or an iPhone, we want something like this where you can, create a toggle menu like that. Where you click on this, it's going to view displayed in a mobile format. We want to have something like this built up. So for me to do that, I need to have a variable to help me to show if the menu is opened, which is going to be if menu opened, and that's going to show true or false if its menu is open. So for those who are not used to React, there's what we call use state, which is a better way for us to create and save variable for for our application. So we want to be able to, so instead of us to say const, I can say is menu open, and then I say equal to false. I mean, you can probably do something like this and then begin to change the value, but this is not the best way to do it. The best way for us to do that is to use what we call a use state. A use state helps to manage our variable properly within the component lifecycle. So the component has different lifecycle. It has the when the component is mounted, when it is changed in the change state, when it's being unmounted, when it's being destroyed, and all of that. So want to be able to manage these variables that will be defined properly to avoid having memory leakage and some other unwanted, improper behavior. So that's where the use state comes in. It helps to manage a variable within the state lifecycle, within the state of instance of that page or that client or that component. So this is going to help us save that. And let also have so toggle the menu and then to close the menu. So we have the toggle menu like that, and then to also close the menu as we want to be able to close the menu up. So having done that, I'm just going to return my template, which we call our HTML code or our UI by saying return, and that's going to be, I'm just going to have everything up, and then I'm just going to explain what happened. Again, we don't want to waste time on this. We just want to show how this can be done and then how the view will look like. So I'm going to have my HTML code up right there, and I've imported my link. The link is what we use to move from page to page, just to, move or navigate from one page to another. So here I have this is basically a list that display item. You can see I have my task flow, which is this, is going to be this one right here. And then I'm adding some styling right there. And then I have my link, which is my home, my to-do, and then the add to-do. When you click on that, it's going to take you to the respective page, which for now we don't have. And then I also have my mobile handbar. So when you toggle the menu and it's a mobile form, it's going to show these three three menu bar, which is going to be something like this. Let me inspect that, and it's going to be something like this handbar, this something like this. Let me zoom this in, something like this. So that's it, and I'm going to, now if I come to my page right here and I refresh, you can see it's not showing because we're not displaying the navbar for now. So for us to display that, I'm going to head to my layout, which for now I don't have. So I'm going to go to my app right here. And this is my layout right here, which is there. I'm going to display the nav right here. Remember this layout, you know, it's what is being injected in our overall page right here. Okay, this page is our home page, and this layer it's what controls our entire application. So I'm going to be coming to the layout, which is the layout of our application. I'm going to place a navbar right there. So I'm going to come right here, and this lets me remove the styling. We don't really need it anymore. And let me explain what we have right here now. For those who might be confused right here, this is we are returning the HTML. Remember, the HTML is our entire application which we are returning. And we are defining the language. Let me move this to be English, which means that our application is going to be primarily on an English. This can help search engine translate our application to different language, by detecting the primary language source. Now, when you see the body right here, this is going to be our page, and the children is going to be the pages that we are displaying at that point in time. So by default, if you are not on any page, it's going to display this home page right here. This is home page. Let me just say hello home page. By default, this is our home page. And you can say hello home page. So this is by default is being injected, is sitting on this children data. Is sitting on the body. Pending till we have our pages, which can then manually sit right here based on our route. So by default, this page right here is our home page, and it's being seated right here. Now, because this is our layout, we need to display our navbar and footer right here, so that no matter the page that is being displayed, our navbar and our footer will always be shown. So for us to do that, I'm going to come right here and bring my nav component right here. Like so, you can see my nav component is at the top, which means that for every page we are in, it's going to be displayed at the top. So if I check this thing right here, let me Control C and start it up again. You can see it's running. If I check again now, you can see my navbar is at the top right there. But the only problem is that I do not have a styling for this navbar. So the navbar is at the top, the page is right here, and then if I have my footer, I'm going to place my footer at the bottom right here. So but for now, our navbar is there, but we don't have the styling. So I'm going to have the styling out, and then so we can see a beautiful design. So I'm going to come to the nav.css right here and have my CSS styling pre-written, straight up styling. And in my nav.ts, I'm going to link that styling right to this place. So further, if I go right now, you can see the styling is not shown because I've not linked it. So right here in my nav.ts, I'm going to link to that style by saying import dot slash nav.css. So this has imported my styling, and if I check again right now, you can see my styling. My navbar is now displayed prettily, and my home page is now being rendered right there. So let's quickly head on to have the footer and also do the same. For our footer, I'm going to close all of this up right there. Close all. That's going to be within the component right here. The footer, I'm going to have my footer. First of all, let me have my footer styling right here. And that's going to be this footer CSS. I'm going to have my styling up right there. Now in my footer.tx, I'm going to create my component right there by saying export default function, and that's going to be called footer, like so. And I'm going to invoke it and create my method. So first of all, I want us to display the current year, something like this, which is going to be the year that we are in. And that's going to be have this method right here to say current year using the new date from the JavaScript and getting the full year. And then I'm going to head on to return my template, which is going to be a dummy data template like so. And I'm going to have my link up from my next link. So is basically a dummy HTML template, which is basically going to be static. And that has been done. If I come to my app right here, we can see it's not showing because I have not displayed it to be shown. So I'm going to head to my app right here, go to my layout. Remember, the layout is what control your entire application. So right here, I'm going to bring in my footer like that. We import it, and that's going to be placed bottom of your application. So your pages is going to be sitting here. Your nav is going to be always at the top. Your footer is going to be always at the bottom. So if I come back right here again, you can see the footer is showing at the bottom, but the style is not there because I've not linked the style. So I'm going to come back to my footer.ts at the top right here. I'm going to say import dot slash the footer.css. This has imported my footer style, and right now we can see the footer is being displayed right now. This is our home page, and then this is our footer page, which is pretty awesome. So we're going to head on to have our home page so that we can have something very beautiful. Remember, as we rightly said, in our app, the page.tsx right here within our app, this is our home page, and we're going to be having our page implementation right here. Now, before we head on, I'm going to have a styling which is going to be specific for this our home page only. So within my app folder right here, I'm going to create a new file, call it home.cxx, and this is going to contain my home page styling. So again, I've already pre-written this out, so I'm just going to have it up right here so we'll not waste our time. Now, in my page.tsx within my app, which is my home page, I'm going to have my page implementation, and I'm going to, by default, I exported the home, which is pretty awesome. And then I'm going to come right here and remove this H1 right here, and then give this a styling, call it home because I have that home already. And then I'm going to have my hero section first of all, which is going to be this one right here, and import my link up right there. And if I check, it's not going to be displayed, it's not going to be styled because I do not have the styling linked. I'm going to link it by coming right here and say import dot slash home.csx, and right now we can see what's going on right here. We can see this is we have our hero section right here. So I'm going to move on to have my feature section below down, which I'm going to be the end part. I'm going to just call it feature section by coming right down and say feature section, this one. And if I check again, this is going to be the feature section. So this is our home page. So for right now, if I click on add new to do, it's expected to go to the add page. So for now, this add page do not exist, and that's why we are getting a 404 error. Also, if I click on view my task, which is view my to do, I click on that, you can see this page do not exist, and that's going to be a 404. So we're going to head on to have a page that will display all our existing to do. So let's have this page up right here that has to slash to do's. So now I'm going to do that. So because Next.js is already a framework, there are already some defined pattern in which we should follow to be able to create pages. So now right here in my home page right here, which is this home page, I already have, you can see right here, I already said that if you want to add a to do, you should go to the slash add. And if you want to view my to do's, let me say to do's. If you want to view my to-dos, you should go to the slash to-dos. Now, how can our Next.js know that this page is a slash to-do? So for us to do that, we need to come to the app and create a folder called to-dos. That's going to be the to-dos page. So if you want to have the to-dos page, this to-dos right here, you're going to come to your app right here, create a new folder, call it to-dos. The name must be the name of the route. So the name of the folder, so in Next.js, folders are routes. So any folder you have within the app it's a page on its own, or it's a rack, or it's a page. So the naming of that folder must correspond with the name of the path right there. So if I probably call this, let's say AAA, I'm going to come right here to create that page and say create a new folder AAA like that. And within this AAA, I'm going to create a new file which is going to be page.tsx. So this is the Next.js coding format, just the way it is. So, okay, so let me delete this right there, just for an example. Now, in my home page, this should be, I want this to be called to dos. So I'm going to come to my app right here, create a folder called to dos. Within this folder, I'm going to create a file called page.tsx. This is the naming convention. It must be a called page.tsx. If you call it something else, it's not going to be recognized as a page. So create a folder which is going to be the path route name, and then within that folder, create your page.tsx. So this is going to be the to-dos page. Now for me, I also want to create a custom styling for this. So I can come to my to-dos folder again and say todos.css, just to have a custom styling for the to-dos page. So I'm going to come again and have my to-dos styling up right here. And with my to-dos page, which is folder page.tsx, I'm going to have my to-dos up right here. So again, export default, that's going to be function, and that's going to be called, let me just, you can call it anything. It does not mean, you can say call it to-dos. I can even call it Dennis. It's not a problem. So I'm just going to call this all to dos. Let me just call it all to dos page, something like that. Your naming does not is not important. It already have a convention right here. It must be a page.tsx. So the naming you give to this function is not a problem. So I'm going to call it all to dos page, and I'm going to have my state variable, which is going to help to hold the to dos that we'll be getting from our database. Now, before we even do that, we need to have our service classes, which will be used to call those data. Okay, so that is not there. So I'm going to do that right here. Before I will do, let me close this up, and let's quickly have our service up. And in the root of my application, you can see we have a service folder right here. And right here, I'm going to have my service class, which will be used to make API call to our backend to get, update, create, and delete a to-do. So within this service right here, I'm going to create a file name. I'm going to call it to-do service.tx right there. And right here, I'm going to export my to-do service. So let me call it to-do service, and this is going to be an object, and it's going to contain the methods for making API call. And before we head on, I want to define my base URL. That's going to be I'm going to say const API based URL, and that's going to be 80. These are API based URL, our backend URL. Now, having done that, I need to have an interface that we can use for our to do and our API response. So we can, we are using TypeScript. We just want to have a heads up on what we're expecting. So this is the to do data we'll be expecting, and this is our API response format. So let's head on to have a method to get to do's. So I'm just going to be a little bit faster so we can get this wrap up quickly. So this is a method to get to do's. Again, it's going to return a promise of our to do data, which is this one right here. And after we've gotten that, I'm going to wrap it within an API response like that, and return it like so. Okay, so that is it. And I'm making a where is it? I'm making a I'm fetching these to dos right here. Make this fetch, make a get request to your API URL right here, and I'm passing the path slash to dos. Remember, this is the path to get all to dos, and this is going to help us to get the API response of the value, and then I'm getting the returning it right here. If it's not there, I'm going to throw an error which we've gotten from the JSON, or if could not extract that, I'm going to return through this error that says fail to fetch to dos. And let's also have to get a to-do by ID. This is going to fetch our backend to get a to-do by ID. Let's have to create a to-do. This one will be a post request, as you can see, a post request, and we are bundling our body. We are passing the title and the description down. This is going to be coming down from the add to do page. We're going to bundle it into a body, and we're going to convert it to a JSON right here, and then call our API backend to save a to do. Then let also have to update a to do and then to delete a to do. So that's going to be to update a to-do, which is this one right here, and then to delete a to-do as well. That's going to be it's like that. So whenever we want to make any of this API call, we are going to call this service right here, call the respective method, listen to the response, and then do whatever we want to do with the data. So that's it for our API service. Now heading back to get all the to-dos page, which is this one right here, I'm going to then bring my state variable right there and then import my service right here. So I'm going to bring down my variables right here, import the use state from React, and then let me also import my API service by saying import. Let me say to do service like that, and also import the to do interface. Again, we remember the interface is also right here. This is the interface in the API service too. So that's going to be that. And then we know what this is. When we make our API call to the backend to get all the to-dos, we're going to save it right here in this variable. And that will be done by using this method to save the data. If there's error, we're going to show this, do this. And we want to also have a model that will be able to use to delete a to-do. So if we go to the older project right here, and you can see, let me try and, if I can see, click on delete, you can see there's this modal that will be shown up. When I click on yes, it will be deleted. When I click on cancel, I want to be able to pull that modal up when you click on the delete button. And that's what these variables are doing. It's going to help to pull that modal up if the modal is open. And this other one, we have to trigger the delete. So I'm going to have what we call a use effect. So for those of us who are React developers, then let me import it first of all. The use effect, it's a method, a very important method that is called or triggered whenever a component is mounted or whenever there is a change in the state of that component. So it's a very important method. So whenever a user comes to this page at the first time, the use effect will be triggered, and whatever method is defined within this use effect right here, whatever code or logic I have within this use effect will be triggered. So we don't have to do anything. When you land on this page, the logic I have within this use effect right here will be triggered. So we want to fetch our to-dos whenever a user lands to the to-dos page. So when I come to the to-dos page, I want a method called fetch to-do, which will help me get all my to-dos. So I'm going to have that method handy, which is going to be called fetch to-dos like this, and this is going to use our to-do service to call our to-do. This is going to connect with our backend to get our to-do, and we're going to set the value to this right here. So in our UI, we can just loop or map over this and display each of the to-do items as they are like this. We also have to open the modal. So we can, if you want to delete, you just click on delete. It's going to trigger the open modal right here. And then if you click on confirm delete, want to use this method to call the to-do service to delete that to-do. And then after everything has been done, we want to close the modal like that. So when it successfully delete, the modal should be closed up. We don't want the modal to be displayed permanently. We want it to be closed up as well. So that is it. And I'm going to render my template by saying return render my UI, so to say. We're going to wrap everything with an empty and then just render my template like that. So very easy peasy. And again, this is a HTML code. So let's just bring it up right here. And again, I'm having the my to do and the add to do. When you click on the add to do, it's expected to take me to the add page. If there's error, it's going to be displayed right here. Now, if the length of the to do is 0, which means that if there are no to do at our end, we're going to display this UI to say no task yet, create your first task to get started. But if we already have an existing data, we're going to display this model up right here, this UI right here. And it's basically you can see I'm mapping over my to-dos, mapping over it, getting each of the data and displaying it. Right here, I'm displaying the title, the description, and I will have this little, div right here that contains the button to edit and then to delete. So when you click on edit, it's expected to take me to the edit page, which I'm going to do later. And for the delete, when you click on the delete, it's going to open the modal, pass in the to-do ID, and then when I click on confirm delete, it's going to pass the to-do ID down to the method, which we then delete that to-do and then close the modal. So that's it for this. And once we've done this, we don't need to register anything. It's going to automatically catch it as a page, and then we can test this out. So let me come right here. Before I will do that, let me import my styling for this page by saying import /todo.css. And then if I come right here, this is our app. We are getting some errors. Okay, you are importing a module that depends on the use effect into a React component. The API is not available in client component. Mark the file with use client. Okay, so you can see we are being told that because that's a client, I should have marked that with a use client right here. You can see mark it with a use client. So I'm going to come back to my page right here, right? And then at the top of this page, which is our to-do page, I'm going to say use client. That's just all we need to do. This is going to register this page as a client, and then next we take care of everything. Now if I come back, you can see error is gone. So very simple. So these are the to-dos we have already at our back end. I can click on delete. If I click on delete, it's going to pop it up. If I say yes, it's been deleted. If I click on edit, that page does not exist right now. So we're going to head on to have this page. If I click on add to do, again, that page does not exist. We're going to head on to also have this page. So that's basically how routing works in Nest and how things are done. We head on to have the add to do page. Now for the add to do page, remember we said that when your user go to /add, the add to do page should be displayed. Now how are we going to have that page set up? I'm going to come back to my code. I'm going to close all of these. And within my app right here, remember all your pages should be inside your app folder. Very, very important. So within my app right here, because I want to have the add to do page, I'm going to create a new folder within the app, and the name must be add. So whatever we call as the rat must be the name of the folder. I'm going to call that add, and within this folder, I must have a name called page.tsx. Very, very important. So it must be called a page. So that's going to be the page for the add. And I can decide to say I want to have a custom styling, which can probably call it anything. I can call it add.css like that. So let me quickly have my custom styling for the add to do in this page right here. And that's it. Now, for the implementation for the add page, the first thing I have to do, so I won't forget, is to register this as a client. So I'm going to come right here and say use client. Very, very important. For all your UI, should have the use client right here. Now I'm going to create my method, my function, and that's going to be called add. You can call it anything, add to do page. And then I'm going to add the for function. I should have used function like that. So I'm going to first of all have my some of my state variables. I'm going to bring them down here, and again import the use state from React. And here we can see we have the title. Let me go to the older one so we can see. If I click on add to do, I want to take hold of the title and then the description, and then I have the title right here. So whenever the user is typing the title, I'm going to set the value to be held right here as title. Description will hold the description value. If there's error, that's going to be displayed using the error. If I'm submitting, I just want to display something, a custom text on the button to say submitting and disable it. So those values will be held right here. And after I've been submitted it, this value will then return to false. Also, whenever I'm done by adding a to-do, I want to move away from this page to a to-dos page. So for me to do that, I can do that by using the router. If I want to do this within a TypeScript environment or a JavaScript environment, I will use the router. If I want to do this within a template, then I can use the link. So because this will be done within a JavaScript function, I'm going to bring the use router down, which I'm going to import from router like that. Okay. So peradventure, if you are having difficulty importing this stuff, what you should do is you can add those dependency, come to the extension, you can search for Next.js like that. You can add the Next.js dependency. Like where is it? Where is it? You can add the Next.js dependency right here. That will also help you for code auto completion and it suggests a more better way to code. Another thing for us to do, as we rightly saw during our back end, was to enable auto import for your next project. So for your JavaScript project. So I'm just going to come again. I think that was file right here. Was it file or the code called settings? And that was setting right here. And that was auto import. Let me see if that was it. Okay, yeah, you search for auto import, and then in your extension right here, you can select JavaScript right here, and then you can see your TSJS should be auto, and just make this stuff auto so that it can be auto imported for you. So you can have the advantage of clicking on it and clicking on command dot to import it right there. So that's how that can be done. By default, it should be enabled if you're using Visual Studio's code. Visual Studio was initially built specifically for front-end development by using, JavaScript, TypeScript. These were what Visual Studio Code was initially built for, until after a while, it then started, having extension and plugin for other backend like Python, Java, and some other stuff. So let's continue. Let's have a method that can handle a submit. When you click on add, that's going to be this method right here. And I'm going to bring the to-do service and import it up right here. So when you click on the create to-do, it's going to call this handle submit and then submit our to-do like that. Then let me return my template UI, just a simple form where users can type in the title and the description of their to-do and then submit it. That's going to be the UI. Very simple. It's a basic form, and this is going to be the input for the title. This is the input for the description, which is the text area, and then this is the button to submit. Now when you click on the submit, it's still submitting. It's going to be showing creating, but when the submission is done, it's going to revert back to create to do. Now when it's submitting, we want to disable the button. That is the essence of us having the submitting use state right here, just to keep track of if we are submitting and if we are not submitting the form. So that's it. So let's test this out. I'm going to come right here. This is the project running on 3000. If I refresh, we are still having some problem right here. Okay, let me see. That's going to be root layouts and stuff. Okay, let me start my app and run again. Okay, I'm saying use router is not being invoked properly, which is right here. Okay, let me just start and clear that again and npm run dev. So this has started properly. If I come right here and go to my to-dos, if I click on add to-do, we are still having the error, cannot be a child of HTML. Header cannot be a child of HTML, okay? So next router was not mounted in the app add page.js, okay? So this one was not mounted. Let me see why this was not mounted. And that should be coming from our use router, should not be coming from the next router. Our use router should be coming from navigation. So import that again, and that should be coming from the next navigation, not next router. So our use router should be coming from the navigation. So this will likely solve our problem. So Control C and run again. And let me go back. You can see when the add to this page, and that is working correctly. But one problem, I need to bring in my styling right up, and that's going to be coming right here and say import dot slash add css, and yeah, that has worked correctly. I'm still getting some issues right there. Let me just check. So we share Control C, run again, refresh this up right here, and I'm still getting issues. I'm just going to check what that problem is. Footer cannot be a child of HTML. Okay, so I think I'm having some problem in my main, in my layout. So let me just go to my layout and see what the problem is. So I'm going to come to my layout in my app layout right here, and it's saying that footer cannot be a child of HTML. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this within a body. So I'm going to have my body right here, and then inside this body I'm going to have my HTML right here, and then have my footer inside the body, and then all my pages will then be seated as the children. So this will be a little bit better. The HTML is going to be the wrapper, the body, everything should be within the body like that. So navbar is inside the body, footer is inside the body. These children will be our pages right there, like the home page, add to do page, edit to do page will sit at the child right here. So this, I'm expecting this to solve my problem. Control C and run again. And you can see my problem has been solved. If I come right here, those issues are gone, and if I refresh, my problem is gone. So let me add our first to do. Again, we already have to do. I think for this one, let's not say add your first to do. Let's just say add your to do. I think that will be better. So come to the home, which is our page, and then let me just call this add your to do rather than your first to do. We might already have to do add your to do. So okay, let's do that. Let me say new to do added just now. Description. Say yeah. Create to do, that's been added. New to do added just now. If I click delete, cancel is still there. If I click delete and yes, that has been removed and deleted. So if I say me at the last one and say so watch soccer. Let's say Man U versus Chelsea will be playing in London. Buy your tickets for 50 bucks. Something like that. Okay. Create a to do. That to do has been there. If I click on edit, that page is not there yet. So we're going to head on to have the page where we can edit a to do. So let's have to edit a to-do. Now you can guess what this route should be, what kind of folder I'm going to create. You can see right now to edit a to-do, my page needs to be in the folder with this format. Remember, if I go back right here, you can see I already have a folder called to-dos right here. So it will not be appropriate for me to create another folder called to-dos. So how am I going to structure this? So it's very simple. Now within this to-dos folder, I'm going to create a folder called edit, a folder of this ID, and then slash edit. So there's a way that is being done. So let's just show you guys how it's done. So I'm going to create this folder right here because this ID 8 is going to be an ID and it's going to be a value that we pass down. There's a hack for that. For next, you can come right here with the to-dos right here. I'm going to create a folder and that's going to be wrapped like this and call it ID. Then put in a slash, create another folder called edit like that. And within this edit folder, you can then create your page.tsx, and then you can decide to have your styling if you want, and probably just say edit.css, something like that. So that's it, that's the hack. So again, because this 8, remember a page is a folder in Nest. So we want to create this folder right here. So you have to say 8 because this 8 is an ID. You have to wrap it within this, bracket like that, and then slash create your folder called edit. And within the edit folder, you have your page and your edit CSS. So let's head on to have our edit CSS quickly set up. And that's going to be something like this. And I'm going to head on to the page and then register this as a client first. And then create my function, which is going to be export default, and that's going to be a function. I'm going to call that edit to do page like this. And then I'm going to bring down the stuff I need, which are my variables. And then I'm going to bring it up right here. Use param should be from your Nest navigation. And then use router should be from your Nest navigation. And then use stage should be from React, like that. So this is so because this 8 right here, or the ID, is going to be an ID. So there's what we called use params, which helps to it helps to view our ID, more like scan our URL. Let me not say ID. It helps to scan our URL, and by scanning our URL, we can get hold of this ID right here, which is something within this bracket. So when you say use parameter, is going to scan your URL, or we're going to say params.id. So whatever you name this stuff right here, let me rename this ID. So if this ID was named, let me say CC. If this was named CC right here, this is going to be params.cc, which is going to be the ID. So whatever this thing is what is going to be here. So again, it's actually good we call it ID. That's going to be more, appropriate. So let me just say .id folder, and this is going to be ID. So that's going to help us get this value, which is 8 right there. And when I'm getting the value right here, I'm going to pass the value to get a to-do per ID. I'm going to get hold of the data, save the title right here, pass the description right here, and then those can then be displayed to the user. When the user is also typing the value, I'm also going to set it and then hold it right here. So that's what this is doing, and this is going to be done by using the use effect right there. So I'm going to trigger my use effect to fetch a to-do by ID. So again, I'm going to come right here and say use effect, and we already know what the use effect does. It's going to be triggered when the user just come to this page, when it's just accessing this page. And then right now I'm just going to make this to keep an eye on the ID. Okay, so what this use effect will do is that whenever this I come to this page the first time, whatever method I have right here, which is going to be to fetch to do, is going to be run. Now, this bracket right here that has the ID, which means that whenever there's a change in the ID value, it's going to re-trigger the use effect. And then it will also, when the use effect is re-triggered, it means that whatever method you have right here is going to be rerun. So whenever there's a change in the ID, it's going to refetch our to-do. Whenever I come to the page for the first time, it's going to fetch the to-do. So that's what by ID. That's what this is. So let's have the method to fetch a to-do by ID, which is going to be like this, and then import the to-do service from our service like so. Then I also have a method to submit when we are editing our to-do. That's going to be called handle submit like this, and this is going to be a submit event like that. Yeah. So that's it, and we are passing the everything down to the service. If there's passing the ID, which if it's been extracted from our params by the use params, then we're passing the title, we are passing the description, and it is completed the value. Now let's head on to return the template by saying return, and this is going to be it's a simple form as we saw before when we're adding a to do. So that's going to return a simple form. And as we can see, it's a simple form called update to do. And this is the form right here. It has the input where you can type your title, the text area will display the description, and you can also type it. And this is the button to mark as completed. And this is it to submit or to cancel. When you click on submit, it's going to trigger the on submit, which we then handle the submit. Now, also you can see right here, I'm saying value equals to title. What this means is that the title that was already collected from our database and saved right here will also be displayed to the user. So if I just come to this page and we've searched for it to do by ID and we've gotten the data, it's going to also be displayed in the input for you to see your existing data. So that's it. And let me link this up with my styling. If I come right here, you can see it's there, but the styling is not there for now. So let me link this up by saying import our edit CSS, and now we can see it's there. So let me go back again and click on edit. Let me click on this one. You can see that's it. I can say to eat burger. I just say completed eating burger. Click on done. You can see completed eating burger. For this other one to watch soccer, I can edit to say done. Let me just mark as completed. You can see it has been marked as completed. So I'm having like issue. Let me just check what's that. And let me Control C and run that again. It has been run correctly. Let me get all the to-dos right here. Let me edit this one. And that issue is gone. I don't like getting issues right here. So I can say to watch Messi versus Ronaldo. And let me unmark it. And now to watch Messi versus Ronaldo. So right here, we can see our home page. We can add a to-do. We can edit a to-do. And then we can delete a to-do. Let me delete this one. Yes, and it's been deleted. So that's it. And this is pretty awesome. And we're going to just going to stop this right here. And then I'm going to push this code to the repo. Do where to check the repo, go over the code, and we're going to meet again in the next course.